I'm laughing right now. You'll see in a minute why. Good afternoon and welcome to each of you. I bring you greetings from the Castine Historical Society's Board of Directors, and that's why I'm laughing, because you're the board of directors. But greetings to each and every one of you. Over the last year, I've had the distinct pleasure to observe the first-rate committee work that greases the wheels of this extraordinary organization. Incredibly talented, intelligent, dedicated volunteers working behind the scenes to be good stewards of our finances, to plan, obtain, and hang our exhibits, to preserve and document our collections, jewels, to keep our physical plant attractive and well-maintained, Jeb and Mike, to raise revenue and nurture donors, Melanie, to develop meaningful educational experiences for young and old alike, and last but not least, this is for you, Lisa, to throw one heck of a great party. A finer assembly of excellence would be difficult to imagine, let alone bring together. What we share is a passion for Castine, its unique and compelling history, and the varied and diverse people who were here before us. It's a privilege to serve as the president of the Castine Historical Society, and it's an honor to work with the amazing people who make CHS who we are. Thank you. So the minutes from the 2025 annual meeting have been circulated. Do I have a motion to approve the minutes of last year's meeting? So moved. Do I have a second? All in favor, say aye. Thank you. All opposed? Great. Thank you. I will consider that passed and approved. I'm going to turn it over to John, who's going to talk a little bit about finance.
I'm going to just advance that slide for you.
Oh, okay. There. Thank you, Debbie. Hi, good afternoon. Welcome. I bring all good news. I don't have anything bad to say. And I'll start with the administrative end of it, and the absolutely outstanding job that Kate and the rest of the staff has done in managing the budget this year. The budget is in great shape. The total income right now is $10,000 more than the budget amount. The expenses are $7,000 less than the budgeted amount, so that is excellent. I mean, that going forward is going to be very good. Operationally, because of a very successful home and garden show, our net operating income is running about 40% greater than last year, and last year it was comfortably in the black. It was so we're operationally we're looking really good. The endowment, and I may jump around a little bit on the endowment. Last fall, the board approved the search for a new manager of the endowment. It's a big job, and the finance committee, Steve Tenney, the chairman, did most of the work and did a great job. There were 10 companies, 10 managers that submitted proposals. They were all carefully examined, looked at. In a lot of cases, there was an actual meeting, review. The finance committee interviewed the top candidates, and bottom line was the board selected H.M. Payson to manage the endowment going forward. During this period, HM Payson was purchased by Corient, a similar large management company. To me, it's important to note that HM Payson searched them out, not the other way around. So the takeover, not takeover, but the sale was totally amicable, and it's proving to be very amicable. Payson's offices remain in Portland. The personnel that we have dealt with have remained in Portland, and they're very accessible, and there does not appear to be any change coming. Payson took over management of the endowment on January 1st. And so far, the endowment has increased 2%, not a big number, but in these times, it's not bad. And we have taken almost 9% less out of the endowment, and that for a number of reasons, and I won't go into each individual reason, but the big number was we reduced the amount that we took out of the endowment. At this point, the endowment is in good hands. It seems to be doing well, and I can say that with the administrative personnel continued great work, with the Finance Committee's oversight, and with HM Payson managing the endowment, the financial health of the Castine Historical Society is in excellent shape.
After a lengthy illness, Peter Tenney passed away on September 16th, 2025. Peter was a history buff. Having spent his life as a summer resident of Castine, he particularly enjoyed being a student of the events that shaped Maine and the legacy of the Baron de Saint-Castin. He was a member of the Castine Historical Society's Educational Committee. And Peter, wherever you are, we trust you're rowing your one-man shell on glassy, calm water. John, I'm going to ask you to come forward again, please. John has been our faithful treasurer, and he is now rotating off the board at the conclusion of his second term. And I have to say, one of my most favorite things to hear in board meetings is John telling us our finances are in good shape. I look forward to that every month. Lucky for us, Susie Hatch has agreed to fill John's big shoes as treasurer moving forward. John, I hope you'll accept that as a small token of our appreciation from a grateful board.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
So now what you all came for, the voting. The Governance Committee recommends that Steve Tenney and me, Dabney McKenzie, serve a second term on the board. Do I have a motion to approve the slate for a second term? And a second? Did I hear a second? All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Thank you. You just never know. For new board members, the Governance Committee recommends that Penny Carlian and Pamela Scully serve their first term. Are there any additional nominations from the floor? With that said, do I have a motion to approve the slate of new board members? And a second. All in favor, say aye. Any opposed? Thank you very much. And now I'll turn the meeting over to our Executive Director, the amazing Kate McMahon, for a review of our 2026 highlights and what we have to look forward to.
Thank you. Well, thank you, everyone. And I'm going to turn it over to Jules to give us a show and tell of collections. Thank you, Kate and Dabney. Hopefully this isn't retreading too much ground for everyone in this room, because you've all probably been here for a while because you're board members. But anyway, I assume there's some public folks, at least on the Zoom, hopefully. So I'm just going to highlight some of the collections that we've gotten. Before I do that, this is just a basic numbers. 36 collections were donated since the last annual meeting, and 6 items were purchased, some of them kind of big ticket, though. So last year, I spoke about our big donation of materials from the Hatch family, and that was kind of the main theme of that meeting. That was accrued over several decades by avid collectors Francis Hatch Jr. and Sr. And this past year, we had a similarly large donation from the Bourne family of Moss Acre, which is also on the Shore Road in North Castine, like the Hatch family property, which is kind of funny. A lot of you probably heard of Moss Acre. Most people in this room probably have, not least because it featured in a CHS exhibit in 2017. And many of you probably also knew the Bourne family, particularly Stan and Virginia Bourne, who lived there for many years. And as they prepared to sell the property in 2025, the family very kindly got in touch with us. And, oh, I was supposed to do a slide there. They got in touch with us and offered a large number of items for donation, mostly archival materials, but also photographs and objects. Here's a historical view of the house. It was commissioned in 1895. It's a really fine example of a rusticator cottage, which we have several of in Castine. It was built for the agricultural equipment heir William Deering Porter of Illinois. And thanks to this beautifully decorated built-in drawer that we found in an upper bedroom, well, the Bournes found it, we also know the names of all the workmen who constructed the house, which is really neat. It was built by Frank Bowden, and Charles H. Hooper was supervisor, but you can also see all the painters and masons and stuff on there. The property's most famous as the home of Mary Molly Dewson, who was head of the women's division of the Democratic National Campaign Committee, a position formerly held by Eleanor Roosevelt. I'm blitzing through these slides because I have so much to say. Eleanor and Molly were good friends. They became good friends when Molly was working on the FDR campaign, and Eleanor visited Moss Acre and even gave a talk at the Unitarian Church in Castine, thanks to Molly's proximity. Molly Dewson was not a native of Castine. She was from Massachusetts originally, but she ended up here because Moss Acre was the family property of her partner, Polly Porter. There's a picture of her there. Who was the daughter of William Porter, the agricultural equipment heir, who commissioned Moss Acre. Polly eventually inherited the property after her father's death in the early 1900s. She and Molly lived there for many summers and moved in permanently as year-rounders in 1952. I don't want to rehash their entire bio, but if you really want to know, you can read this excellent book about them by Susan Ware, who also has given talks for us in the past. For the moment, I will say, though, it's hard to overstate how cool Molly and Polly were. For one thing, they were both early supporters of women's suffrage, which we've got some pictures of here, and they did a lot of campaigning and organizing in the first 2 decades of the 1900s. And that brings us to our first show and tell item from the recent addition to the collections, which is that bluebird on the left there. It was issued by the Massachusetts Women's Suffrage Association in 1915. There was a referendum that year for women's suffrage, and the bluebird was essentially like a fancy piece of swag that was supposed to remind people to vote. It's stamped with the words, "Votes for Women number 2." The reason it's a bluebird is a little bit random. It was apparently based on a massively successful play in 1908 called The Bluebird, and it popularized the bird as a messenger of joy and fulfillment. But unfortunately, despite that, the 1915 referendum did not pass, and it was another 5 years before the 19th Amendment was ratified. But obviously, Molly and or Polly kept this in their possession for the rest of their days as a memento of the struggle. There's some other really cool history here because during the First World War, they went to France to work for the Red Cross, helping to resettle refugees. And these pictures are all from albums that we already had, thanks to the Bourne family. Back in 2016, they donated an amazing array of 28 photo albums and scrapbooks. But now we can also contextualize this. with all these records that we now have from this new donation. It's a whole box of records. Many of them are official correspondence with supervisors and colleagues in the Red Cross, but also with family and friends back in the US. And as you can imagine, the work they were doing could be quite taxing, as evidenced, I think, by some of Polly's letters here. A lot of refugees were arriving in the early morning and then also late in the afternoon. It was like this round-the-clock job, and it grew more dire in 1918 with the peak of the German offensive in France. So you can see one of her letters there, and then these are really funny. So this is one of her letters to Molly. And actually, these letters are quite important because they're really like one of the only examples we have of letters between the two of them. We only really have Polly's correspondence during World War I and then some other Polly letters from, I believe, the 1950s. Anyway, in these letters, Polly often speaks of the difficulties arising in the course of her work and sometimes gets very candid, as you can see from some of those quotes. But also her humor and wit are evident throughout the letters. They're really fun to read. And incidentally, like everything by Molly and Polly is kind of has the tenor of this like humorous correspondence. They were both definitely natural comedians, and so they're really fun to read as well as being historically important. And then we also have, from the new donation, several scrapbooks and letters evidencing Molly's illustrious career working for the FDR administration. I love some of these newspaper headlines. They're kind of unhinged. She played a major role in the 1932 presidential campaign. She attracted a large number of female voters to the Roosevelt ticket. And she was also the first woman to serve on FDR's Social Security Board and was instrumental in the appointment of Frances Perkins as Secretary of Labor. So kind of a big deal. Most of her official career materials are actually at the FDR Library or the Schlesinger Library at Radcliffe, but about a box's worth remained at Moss Acre. And these were probably mostly things that she would have kept for herself and maybe shown off to family and friends. They do include various U.S. president letters that she had framed on her wall in her office, which kind of demonstrate the breadth and magnitude of her political career. You can see here, there's a 1911 letter from Teddy Roosevelt, a 1940 letter from Franklin Roosevelt, and a 1953 letter from Harry Truman. And there's like so much more, but I don't have time to show it all off today, unfortunately. And so actually, the only other thing I want to mention, even though we did have a lot of interesting donations, but I had to truncate it, I do want to mention the purchases that we also undertook, or at least two of the highlights from the purchases this last year. Interestingly, speaking of things that were signed by presidents or have associations with presidents, both of these things do as well. The first is an 1802 government document appointing Josiah Hook Jr. to the position of customs collector in Castine, and it is signed by Jefferson and Madison, who was Secretary of State, I believe. And the second is a silver tray monogrammed with the initials of Noah Brooks, a 19th century writer and journalist who grew up and retired in Castine. The tray also has the phrase, "Regards of A. Lincoln," kind of scrawled on the back of it. So to the best of our knowledge, it was actually a gift from Abraham Lincoln, who was a good friend of Noah Brooks's. And he actually had him tapped to be his personal secretary before he was assassinated. So we were only able to purchase the item on the left there, the Hook collector appointment document, with the very generous support of no less than 14 individuals who chipped in to support our dwindling acquisition budget for the year. And we are so grateful to everyone who did. The document will have an ongoing life as an exhibit item and will allow us to talk not only about the role of Castine as a customs port, but also historical flashpoints like the 1807 embargo and the War of 1812, in addition to Josiah Hook's biography, which is really interesting in its own right. It was a real community effort to purchase this item, and I think it really demonstrates the commitment and dedication of the CHS board and committee members to preserving Castine's history and making it accessible to all. So thank you. That is all I have right now.
Thank you, Jules. And I'm going to move on to my report for the year. So since we last met in August of 2025, we had some really fun programs that rounded out our 2025 season, including a visit from some young students from the Round School And we also had an interesting performance about incarceration in Maine. And of course, our sip and shop, where we were all treated to some delicious cider courtesy of Lisa Hogan. And our cannonball made a really important appearance at the sip and shop. And also in the fall, one of the most major events for us and was a large community undertaking was Massapequattosik, if I pronounce that correctly, a wayfinding walk, which was a walk for historical and ecological recovery convened by Atlantic Black Box in October. It included a long research project collaboration between Castine history partners and local researchers looking into the Indigenous and Black history of this place. And then we created some temporary signs throughout the town that talked about important events and contextualizing our history in this place. We also were treated to an incredible performance of the Malaga Ship by storyteller Antonia Rocha, as well as a performance by Penobscot musicians Firefly the Hybrid, which you can see on the right. And together at the end of the event, we created a canoe that was on the lawn of the Wilson Museum made out of driftwood and found fabric. And it was a really powerful moment for our community to be thinking about our history and some of these untold stories of Castine and this place. We had a busy winter planning some of our 2026 programs in addition to all of the other things that we were planning. And this year we kicked off our 2026 programs with a really fun printmaking workshop at the Mitchell Room that was for artists of all ages. We had 40 participants. We were at capacity, and they created some incredible works of art for us. We, of course, had our open house in June. We had over 125 people attend. We weren't really sure. We lost count. It was a very busy open house, and most of you were there. It was a lot of fun. And then, of course, we had over 150 people show up for Jerry Magnifico's talk on July 23rd, which was really fun and informative. And we look forward to welcoming Jerry back this winter to tell us more about Castine's architectural history over Zoom. So stay tuned. I will send out an announcement once I can nail down the particulars. Of course, our biggest program of the year was the House and Garden Tour. It featured 11 homes and 3 gardens. We had over 1,400 attendees. We raised over $170,000, over $100,000 net after all of our expenses. And we had more than 250 volunteers. This event was incredible and could not have been done without the incredible leadership of Ruth Shearer, who's in the room with us, and Mary Dearborn, who is not, who really pulled this incredible group of volunteers together. And I had just amazing feedback from all kinds of people, everyone I talked to who has attended or has written me since then is really excited about next year. And of course, we could not have done it without all of the volunteers who drove vehicles. Thank you to Ken Shear for arranging the transportation, as well as all of our volunteers who worked in the houses and who helped with setup. I mean, just an amazing group of people. We won't be doing the House and Garden Tour again until 2031. We're trying to schedule it so that it does not occur on the same year an exhibit opens. For the staff. So stay tuned from us to hear more about what's next for the House and Garden Tour. We have, including these incredible programs, we have some really great programs coming up. We have a bean supper and volunteer appreciation coming up next Saturday. Which will have a volunteer appreciation cocktail party at the CHS ahead of the bean supper at 4:30, and then we'll move over to Emerson Hall for some beans and franks and brown bread in a can, like you should have in Maine. On September 17th, we've just added a program called The Burning of the Royal Tar, which was a ship that was carrying a circus that sunk in the Penobscot Bay in 1836. And so we'll be hearing from Dennis Dorsey, who is a diver who has been investigating the wreck and has a book that has just come out on that history. On September 24th, we'll welcome back Dr. Liam Rorden from the University of Maine to give another talk for us on the Penobscot expedition called Ambiguous Allegiances in the Revolutionary Northeast, Wabanaki Diplomacy, Patriot Defeat, and the British Fort George. Ahead of that event, we'll have a little bit of time to do an archive viewing, so check out our website to learn more about what you'll get to see. On October 15th, I'm going to give a talk, only on Zoom, about the research I'm currently conducting on Castine and global slavery during the Age of Sail in the 19th century. In October, we'll have cemetery tours again. I'm working on finalizing those dates, so stay tuned. And on December 10th, we'll have our sip and shop. And I am going to try for us to have at least one Zoom program a month over the winter. So stay tuned to the newsletter and our website, and I'll be announcing some other speakers to keep the momentum going over our closed season while we're all huddled in blankets. So in attendance this last year has been pretty incredible. In 2025, for our exhibits, we welcomed 2,632 people. This year, we welcomed 1,000, thus far through July, 1,966, which is 700 people more than last year. And even if we look back to 2022, we still have over 250 more visitors than we did on the last House and Garden Tour year. So it's been a really busy year for our exhibition. We've also welcomed a lot of attendees to our programs thus far, both in person and online, and of course, a number of people to our walking tours this year. So we will continue to add those programs and hopefully increase our attendance. So the biggest draw this year was our exhibit, Francis Hamabi's Maine, A Life in Art. This exhibit showcases 39 two-dimensional works of art and dozens of ceramics and archives and puppets and all kinds of things. Everybody here has been in the exhibit. It is a fun, happy, joyful exhibit and really showcases Hamabi's love of this part of Maine. It was curated by Carl Little, who, as you all know, curated the Clark Fitzgerald exhibit a few years ago. And all of these materials came to us via loans, which really shows that this was a community-driven effort. We had incredible collaboration between our organization and the Blue Hill Public Library, who also have an exhibit on Hamabi up right now through the month of August. If you haven't checked it out, you definitely should. It provides additional beautiful works of art that are in mostly private collections as well. And we had an amazing graphic designer that we started working with this year, Mina Chong, who is based in Los Angeles, who created all the beautiful signage inside the exhibit, as well as our rack cards for the exhibit this year. And you can see a few photos here. It was quite the effort, in particular, to get flying Walendas here to the Historical Society. This painting is over 9 feet long. And really required some special care to both get it in a van here, as well as get it up on the wall. And of course, our incredible quilt team, led by Don Tenney, came and installed the quilts in the early spring. And again, this is such an important piece of our exhibits and something people come from far and wide to view every year. Next year, we will be rotating many of the paintings and silk screens inside the exhibition for Francis Hamabi's Maine. So we'll keep it fresh since we had over 100 offers of loans from people in Castine and in the area. We're going to try to bring visitors back to us to see new works of art that Hamabi created. So for buildings and grounds, we've had quite a busy summer. We've had a few things. unexpected things that have happened. Last fall, we discovered that there was some missing clapboards on the back side of the Abbott School where the addition is, which is where the fire escape stairwell is. We had several quotes for repair work and painting, and eventually settled on a man in Bucksport Strong home improvement. And of course, he started doing this work, and there's rot, there's, just any old building. So this has created, on the bottom image, you can see some extensive clapboard repair. He has wrapped the building, waterproofed, so it will hopefully last many more years to come. And he will be painting the entire backside of the Abbott School and wrapping up within the next 2 weeks. So it should be hopefully done and dusted. One day after a bad windstorm, the Abbott School sign fell off the building, which was also exciting, and thanks to David Hatch, who happened to have a lift in town, they were able to secure it up on the side of the building, but we will likely need to replace that sign, and I'm currently trying to find sign painters who make those black and gold signs. It's not a super easy thing to find someone who does that these days. So that will probably be something we have to do in 2027. We've also had to totally upgrade our Wi-Fi system in the building, as well as our phone lines, which were what my husband called old enough to be part of the collection of the Historical Society. So we were running on almost 20-year-old equipment for the internet stuff, and even older phone lines, basically going back to when the building was renovated. And unfortunately, technology has shifted such that we were stuck between a rock and the hard place and had to do it. So we now have super fast Wi-Fi, and we have a few more things that we'll be exploring to make our digital landscape up to modern standards. So we've had a really great year for our education committee and our programs. I'd like to especially thank Ellen Plato and John Boyer for their continued support and their increased support of our internship program. We had Camden Breckenridge with us this summer, who many of you probably met at the House and Garden Tour, and they curated an exhibit on Fort George, which you can see a little preview of at the bottom here. Some really interesting objects and images found in our archive, and that will be up in the Witherly Library at the beginning of September, so definitely check it out when you're in the library this fall. And of course, our education committee has been really busy on making sure that we have some fun programs for all ages of the family. And that includes, of course, our printmaking workshop, which was really stewarded in particular by Jean DeSabatino and Tina Anthony, who did a really great job making sure this event was such a success. And we're definitely going to do it next year. We had some really awesome feedback. We had young families who have never been to the Castine Historical Society before come and attend. So we'll be thinking about how we can do programs like this in the future. The Education Committee has also been busy at work revising some of our walking tours to make them both more streamlined, as well as increase the information about the history of Wabanaki peoples of this place and some of that more ancient history of what we now know as Castine. And so that will be something that we will likely be unveiling in 2027. And looking forward, our next exhibition, to go along with the 250th, is going to be on the Penobscot expedition. So we're in the very early stages of planning right now. I'm just sort of beginning to conceptualize and think, what is this exhibition going to be like? How is it going to be fresh and give us some new perspectives on the Penobscot expedition and expand on our permanent exhibition that's in the gallery in a way that helps us see how this has continued to impact this place, Castine, over generations. We, of course, have an amazing collection of archival material here, as well as archaeological material that we can pull from. And there is also material across the state of Maine and other places like the Maine Historical Society that we can borrow. So this is sure to be a really interesting exhibition and appeal to our audience that loves military history, Revolutionary War history, maritime history, all of that kind of stuff. So stay tuned. I will be reaching out in 2026 to begin and think about it with the exhibitions committee and others who might want to weigh in on what we do for this exhibit. But I think it's going to be really fun. And just a reminder, you can learn more about the Penobscot expedition at Liam Martin's talk on September 24th, which will also be on live streamed if you cannot attend in person. So what's next after this? Capital campaign. I know we talked about it last year. We had a great meeting a couple of weeks ago. Many of you met the folks from Maine Preservation, and it turns out that there are potentially some grants available for us to help us do this work. So I'm beginning to explore that with our colleagues over there. We want to think about hopefully moving this forward in 2027. There's some work that the board will need to do to think about how we do that in a way that makes sense and what kind of advising we need from outside folks. And then, of course, we need to get to fundraising and get to grant writing. And what am I envisioning right now? I am envisioning a permanent exhibition that explores the history of Castine from its indigenous history all the way to the present day. An area that is specifically aimed towards education for school children, so that we can welcome our local school at the Adams School, as well as kids from the whole area to come to the Historical Society to learn about the history of this place and do some hands-on activities, hands-on history kind of work as well. And of course, as part of this, we will be taking what we're learning about the Penobscot Expedition temporary exhibit and thinking about how can we take that information and put it into an expanded and revised permanent exhibit on the second floor of the Historical Society. So it's a lot of work. We're talking a lot of money in order to do this work, at least $1 million. An elevator alone is $250,000. So we will certainly be needing to fundraise and work together to think about how to make this happen. But it's very exciting, and I think we have a lot we can do together as a community to make this a really amazing space. And of course, other things that we'll have to do, the nuts and bolts, climate control, HVAC, which I think our docents will all love to have air conditioning in the Abbott School. And the elevator, there's some exterior work that will have to happen no matter what in the next few years, including repainting the whole building, as well as windows and all kinds of things. So it's a large project, and but it's an exciting one. And that's all I have for the program today. So thank you so much for coming. We have some beverages in here. There's going to be cheese and nibbles outside, as well as in here. And look forward to speaking with you. The bar is open if you would like to purchase an alcoholic beverage. So thank you all so much.